and welcome back to the podcast. We are here with Greg Zakowicz, who is a veteran marketer and the senior e-commerce expert at Omnisend.com. And if you've been hearing about how email is dead, if you're maybe stressing out about iOS 15 or SMS, or any of the above or similar related categories or solutions, then Greg and Omnisend are your people to talk to. We're going to be speaking today about e-commerce and about how you can tap into some of these technologies and so much more. So Greg, glad to be talking to you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Robert. I appreciate being here. Always love doing these things. So it's someone new to do it with this time, you know?
Yeah, and you kind of have to these days, right? Because if you're stuck in your own little bubble, your own little box, you're only going to get so far. You have to network. You have to be a people person, even if it's awkward, doesn't come naturally. You have to market. You have to do that outreach. So I'm excited to speak with you to find out about what makes you unique and what Omnisend does and what problem it solves. So tell me about it. What the heck is Omnisend and why should we use it?
We just use it because it's the best, but let me get to what it is. So just very quickly, we are an email and SMS marketing automation platform specifically built for e-commerce merchants. So we always like to say, if you have a shopping cart on your website, probably a good fit for you. So we handle typical email marketing like you would expect from most email marketing platforms nowadays with segmentation, automations, the whole 9 yards. We also have SMS and web push notifications through the platform, along with retargeting or resyncing with, say, Google and Facebook ad properties as well, which we'll probably talk about a little bit today. But obviously, all of these are designed with the e-commerce brand in mind, where we can take one piece of data, assimilate it across different things, including making your retargeting more effective as well. So plug and play integrations with pretty much all your major e-commerce platforms, Shopify, Shopify Plus, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, and the like there. So hopefully that's good 45-second spiel for you.
It is. And, you're making me think that it probably happens about once per week when and it's usually I'm on my phone, I see something on Facebook, I see an ad or something, and I click and I leave the tab open on my phone. And I think to myself, like, I wish someone would retarget this to me. And then I forget about it. And then I'll be on my computer where, like, me personally, I usually browse on the phone and I buy on the computer. And then I'll just leave this browser tab number 4 open on my phone for like a couple of weeks. And then I'll just let it sit. And then it's like I would have bought if I had gotten like a push notification or an email or an SMS or retargeting or something. And then a few months later, I just feel bad about seeing the same tab open on my phone again and again. I close it and I think to myself, if it's been this long, there must not be an urgency for me to buy this thing. And then I end up not buying. And I think to myself, like, I wish I had gotten that little reminder. So is that typical, or do you have any kind of data about how important all these additional little channels are just to like get that last little stretch of sale on these e-commerce sites?
So Robert, you touched on the one thing which I think is super important that a lot of consumers or marketers don't really talk about. You talked about urgency. I'll use the word intent on here, right? So whether you're going to buy, I don't know what you're reviewing, but let's just say it's a sweater, right?
I forgot too. That's how much it disappeared. Yeah.
It's the book behind you. So intent here, there's something in your life that took you to that website, whether you were planning on buying that sweater that day, 2 weeks from now, or you were saving it for Black Friday, which is, it's not 3 months from now, but we'll just say it's 3 months from now. There's something in your life that took you to that point, and there's some sort of intent there. And I think those reminders, whether they're browser abandonment messages, web push notifications, whatever it might be, those are designed to just kind of feed that intent or urgency on there. Yeah, we know you like it. We know there's something there taking you there. Those things can just push you over the edge or re-entice you or just feed into that intent. So I would say those things are extremely important. I would say from an email or SMS standpoint, specifically email. So we have these data reports that, I aggregate all this data, and us as a team, we put these things together, and then we look at it and we sift through it and try to figure out, hey, what are the trends here? So these are ungated reports. You can check them out on omnisend.com. So we're not going to ask you. You could just go read them, get some more insight into them. So browse abandonment messages are one of these things we track, and we look at, how many we send, what are the click conversion rates, all these things on here. Browse is typically one of those top 3 automated messages that perform the best, right behind welcome messaging and cart abandonment. Also 2 other very high intent messages here. So, from a push notification standpoint, I give you general metrics on here. You can see those in the report, but browse abandonment messages, when people are going and viewing products or viewing categories of products, and then they leave and they get retargeted with those, extremely effective because they're the equivalent of right message, right time, right place, right channel. So it's the relevance that matters here for them.
And why Omnisend to do all these things? Because for some reason, I'm when I'm thinking about like whatever solution to apply to my business, I'm afraid of moving to some new platform where it's unfamiliar, and I'm afraid of getting stuck and maybe like going down this path and like doing all this work that I might have to undo later. And I know that it holds me back to try to have like the piecing together mindset. And so when I hear about all the things Omnisend does, my thought process thinks, well, why not just go and do a Facebook retargeting ad? Why not sign up for this email service, this SMS service? Why Omnisend, and why have it all in one place?
Well, I think there's two different things there. We'll start with the latter, which is why have it all in one place? Because I think this is the thing that's probably most important for e-commerce brands today is you want that data to feed the other data. So we know that, from paid social, great channel to market to, right? There's fluctuating costs typically with that. It's market driven. So we've seen over the course of the past year plus, a lot of brands going to, increasingly going to social platforms for retargeting. The cost to return ebbs and flows quite a bit. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's less than good, and you just kind of marry it there. Email is one of those things where there's more control costs. It's been like this for a decade. If there are platforms significantly raising prices on you out of the blue, there's really not a lot of reason for that. They'll give you a reason, but it's generally more cost controlled, and the returns have been pretty consistent over the past decade or so. You kind of know what that ROI is going to be. You can fine tune that. You can get worse based on list hygiene, but it's generally there. It's also first party data, and this is the important part of like having it all in one place. So if you're marketing to me via email, I've signed up to receive emails. I want to receive that communication. That can't be said on Google search, or that can't be said on social, paid social, because it's part of the deal. But I don't go to Facebook or I don't go to Instagram to see the ads. Now, I might respond to them. Email, SMS, push notifications. On the other hand, I have to say, yep, I want to receive those messages and raise my hand for it. But we can use that data to then, this is where we talk about all in one place, and resync it to those ad properties. We could say, hey, this person has purchased from us because our email platform is integrated with the e-com platform. So we have all that purchase data. We have that browse data. So we know if Greg's abandoning, pink fuzzy slippers in his cart or on the product. You can then automatically sync that to Facebook properties. So, Instagram, whatever it might be, or Google properties. So search, YouTube, all those things there, and say, hey, as opposed to just having this segment of people who might have done something at one time, we can now have this real-time updating segment saying, Greg just purchased pink fuzzy slippers. We don't need to retarget him on Facebook this next week or today on these things. Or on the vice versa, I didn't purchase. We have all this data, but I clicked on this email and I browsed this site over here. We can retarget me on those properties where I am actually there. And then we can create lookalike audiences based on that as well. But it's using that single piece of data, or there's multiple pieces of first party data to then feed all the other things. Of course, if email or SMS isn't their jam and I wound up purchasing on Facebook, right, that purchase goes to the e-com platform. It then tells my email campaigns, my SMS campaigns, and my segments sync to those properties that I've purchased. We can cease retargeting at that point. So that's a really long answer for you, Robert, on why all in one place. I'll give you a quicker answer on replatforming, like switching providers, because your concerns are legit concerns, or concerns everyone has. We make it super easy, right? And that's the benefit of it. We can integrate your Shopify store with Omnisend in literally 2 minutes or less, right? It's super easy moving over. There's always going to be a little bit of pain, always going to be a little bit of time consumption going there. But if you can increase your sales, you can make your targeting more effective, you can decrease your spend on these other channels. That's all profit. It's all revenue. And we can make that better for you. And that's why you would want to switch. You want to go for long-term, short-term and long-term results, but you can make more revenue, more profit. And that's the end of the game, right? We want to maximize those things as best possible.
And that makes a lot of sense. That, I mean, I imagine that like I'm probably on maybe like 4 or 5 of these platforms as far as like a browser, as far as a consumer, right? Like I'm not on all of them because of, personality, age, levels of awareness, all those things. But, I'm on YouTube a lot. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook a lot, Google. But it makes a lot of sense where if you were using separate services, you'd only get like a little sliver. But then if there's someone like me who's on like 5 different sites, you're like getting the whole person. And so like you said, you get the reach to kind of wake them up everywhere, to kind of get, break the pattern everywhere with them, to kind of, so they recognize the ad. But then also, as you said, you save money too, because once they buy, now it shuts off those ads in the other locations for them. So that makes a lot of sense that if there's one person on 5 platforms, you're not treating it as 5 separate people. It's one person on the 5 platforms.
Yeah. Plus, as the brand, you're not paying for 4 different platforms. You're not paying for an SMS provider. You're not paying for an email provider, and then paying for whatever properties you're using here, right? You're paying for one solution that is then going to feed all those things. So, there's a lot of cost benefit to it as well. Beauty here is, 10, 15 years ago, having a sophisticated platform for marketing purposes, it was a lot more challenging. It was a lot more complex. It was a lot more expensive than it is today. Those costs have come down, the ease of use has gone up, and it makes it affordable for mom and pops, or 5-10 person teams, all the way up to your larger companies. It's kind of democratized e-commerce from that perspective. And it's kind of the beauty of the age we live in now, where the big guys and the small guys, they can go head to head. They get the same solutions for them, and it's not costing them an arm and a leg for it.
Yeah, and it's easy to think like, oh well, I'm not cheap, I'm not a penny pincher, but all of these $50, $120 a month services, it really adds up. It's no joke when you're just saying, well, I'm paying for this SMS service and I'm paying for this email provider on top of the paying for the ads. Like, you really think at first like, oh, well, I'm just paying 20 or 30 here for like the base starter package. But then as you grow, then now suddenly you're paying more separately than you would together for a worse solution, because with Omnisend you could pull up your one contact and see all the things versus trying to connect that. And you and I both know, Greg, if you have to like manually piece all these things together and you can't just look and see the number or the KPI, then you can't really make good decisions. If it takes you too long to get the answers, then you can't really like untap your creative brain. So, and it's underrated, but it's really important, I think.
Yeah, you touched on it too, like the reporting aspect of it, right? I want to do a report again in the month or every week or whatever you're doing reports. If I'm pulling a report out of this system and this system, then you have to match those things together and be like, what are we doing here, right? So you're getting kind of half, or you're not getting the complete picture, right? Whatever that percentage is, you're just not seeing the whole picture there, where one platform that handles all these things, you get more of a complete picture, and then you can use that a little more strategically. So, we talk about cost savings, but also time savings. Time is money. So it allows you less time you're focused on doing these small things, more time you could focus on growing your business and doing those other things that it takes. Like, even the email marketer, they've got 40 other things they're doing on a day-to-day basis as well. So whoever's doing the reports, whoever's doing the planning, they can focus that time elsewhere. And that's going to be a benefit to them as well.
I agree completely. Focus on growth, revenue generating activities, not just the day-to-day, the maintaining. And so you and I have gotten into some really technical details here, which is fun, but it's also fun to kind of go onto the other extreme and kind of get into a fun story. So do you have any interesting like success story or case study with one of these like e-commerce or Shopify sites that use Omnisend, so that way we can get a feel of what it's like to use your platform?
Yeah, so we've got a few on the website you can check out. Again, we don't gate those things either, so you can just kind of browse them, and we don't get a whole lot there, so you can just browse, and we like to make that information open to people. We didn't talk about SMS. I'll give you one on SMS because they're doing really well in email, but it was an email kind of graduation story, and I can tell it very quickly here. But there's a company called Divatris, and generally younger demographic. They were doing really well with their emails, increasing sales, came over to Omnisend, increased them further. And then SMS was one of these things where we're talking to the owner and goes, everyone's talking about it. It's all the rage. He didn't think it was going to be a valid marketing channel for him. He's like, but it doesn't cost you anything to ask for the mobile number. So he just added that field to his pop-up on his website. 8 months, got 70,000 SMS subscribers, 13,000 of which were SMS only. So email wasn't their thing, but SMS was. 8 months, 123,000 in excess sales, and as now their number 2 primary marketing channel behind email. So you talk about paid social, paid search, all these other things here. SMS is now a number 2 for it. So he was able to increase sales. It's a growing channel. And he's like, hey, I took a flyer on it. I thought there was no way we were going to succeed with it, but it's now number 2 for him. And it's all one place. So he can feed automation, whether it's email, SMS, into the same workflows. So when someone browses on the website and abandons, he can have a series that goes out for email and SMS to that person to get them back. Or if they're SMS only, he can have SMS or email only. He can customize that. But those flows then become a lot more relevant, a lot more personalized for him. So I think it's a really good story of, a lot of people say, well, my audience would never do SMS. They would never do it. My mother's a baby boomer. She subscribes to brand SMSs. It's unbelievable. I did not know this until I was visiting her over winter, and her phone kept dinging, and she's reading them out loud, and they're all from brands. And I'm going, this goes to everyone. That's the beauty. And this is what the owner of DivaTrist, Rob, when I was talking to him, said, he goes, again, it doesn't cost me anything to ask for the numbers, but I always say it's a really good telltale, right? Ask for the numbers, that if no one's signing up for it, maybe your audience doesn't go for it. Maybe that's not the channel for them, and that's okay. But right? But if you start seeing it like these guys did, come in droves, you got something there. Then you can start playing around with how to execute and how to use it. And you don't have to go from 0 to 100. You can just kind of dip your toe in the water, figure out where it works best for you and your brand, and then you roll. But it's a really good example of, not resting on your laurels and going, oh, email's killing it for us. We've got these other paid channels. We're doing really well with them. We don't need to add something else, right? It's always about figuring out, how do we maximize the revenue we can increase here.
Yeah, and I mean, those are some amazing numbers. And I think it's a really huge and important reminder, like you said, to not rest on your laurels, and don't assume, and don't hold yourself back and unknowingly self-sabotage just because you think that the way you do it is the way everyone else does it, and that the way it's always been done is the way that it should be done in the future. I mean, I had this friend that for some reason for many years thought everyone used MacBooks, just because he used a MacBook and all his friends did. And I looked up like the percentage of people that use MacBooks, and that number, and they're great, but the percentage was really low. And I'm like, look at the data. And like, when you think about all these like visionaries, right? You think about like, Walt Disney or Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or whoever, they always like did crazy things, right? They did things that challenged the norm, that sometimes were maybe dumb ideas at first, but then it developed into something better, or a wild guess, and just tried something different. And so this is a important lesson here that you're telling us to just capture the SMS and just try it, give it a go for any number of days, and just see what the results are. Because even if you have these assumptions already, you can't predict the future. You don't know what might happen. You might be like this company that got the $123,000 extra just by playing around and by capturing the message and by using it. I mean, just use the tool and see where it goes. That's great.
Yeah, and I would say those examples you gave, right? They also had plenty of failures, but their failures, unlike anyone who might be listening to this podcast, they're probably going to come with a lot. Like, they were probably a lot more expensive than any failure you're going to have, right? So you could send a few SMS out and be like, man, that crashed and burned, not my jam. But like ultimately, what's that costing you, right? It's not costing you tens of thousands. It's not even costing you probably $200, if that. So that's the beauty of testing it. And it doesn't have to be SMS, right? We see this, and I see it with brands that are just strapped for time. I saw when I was consulting large brands too. They had 1 or 2 people doing their emails, and they were doing 4 other things, and their time was strapped as well. So even though they had more resources, they didn't have the time resources on their side. So I would say even with email, right? We talk about automation. We've been hearing automation for 15 years. You could have sent a cart abandonment message 15 years ago, right? It was just a lot harder to do. So a lot of brands will have that now, but browse abandonment might be a good example. We're seeing it increasingly used, but still it's an opportunity for brands. Ultimately, you could try that out, and it might not be for your audience, but ultimately, what's that costing you? It costs you a little bit of time to create the email, which that content's probably all there. Choose your categories, but the automation takes 5 minutes to set up. So you're investing a little bit of time into it, and then you're rolling it out there and just seeing if it works, right? And if it doesn't work, that's fine. I'll guarantee you it will work. So you'll be all right there. You come yell at me if it doesn't, but it's an example of like birthday messages or post-purchase messaging or whatever, right? If it's something you're not doing, it could be as simple as a very basic automation. Roll it out there, see what happens. If it doesn't work, kind of kill it, right? But you're not out tens of thousands of dollars, right? You might be out a couple hours and $5 in emails, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The cost of failure, if you could call it that, is very small compared to what it was, and also the time to get to that failure, which, as you said, like it probably won't be the failure, but just get to the point where you know if it'll work or not. And it used to be 10 times as much and take 10 times as long. And now is the time to do these crazy experiments, because like that, I think that the average person, say they try 3 things and then the 2 of them fail. And then these legends that you hear about, they tried 30 things and 29 of them failed. But because they kept trying and they got to the failure quicker, then they were able to fit it all in and make it all work. So I think that we've covered so much, right? We've covered technical ideas, we've covered stories, we've covered motivation, we've covered strategy. So if someone out there says, this is amazing, I need to jump on this before my negative thinking brain talks myself out of it, I need to get dialed into the SMS and the email and the retargeting and everything else that goes along with it, I need to check out Omnisend today, right now, not tomorrow, but right this instant. Where should they go and what should they do?
So best place, omnisend.com, super easy. All the social handles, if you want to check those out, are all just Omnisend. So easy enough to find. If you're interested in SMS or even different ways to do, right, what the trends with email marketing, how they're converting, things like that, omnisend.com, just go to resources, those data reports on there. Again, they're all ungated, so you can just read them at your leisure. But we got them on even post iOS 15, right? That came out. We just crossed a year since that was released, but we did a separate one on just that to see the impact. Great trends spotting there for your email and SMS program. So you can kind of see what the adoption, what the sends, conversions, click rates, all those things are. Kind of compare them against yourself, but see what opportunities are out there and what kind of the analysis that I put into that for what this all ultimately means. Like, see how it applies to your program. But omnisend.com, easiest way to do it. But we've got learning centers there for education as well. So if you just want to get smarter, we've got free resources there for you as well. So omnisend.com.
Well, fantastic. And that's why someone is listening to this podcast that we're on right now, right? Because they want to get smarter. They want to have the facts. So you made it this far on the podcast and you were interested about everything Omnisend. So this is a sign. Don't just, if you just learn all this stuff and then just stop, then you're wasting time. But if you learn this and say, okay, so much of what Greg said made a lot of sense. Now I need to go over to omnisend.com and just get educated and get some ideas and see the things that you're not doing. I mean, I know that me personally, Greg, I kind of feel bad on myself when I'm like, oh, I'm not tracking this, or I don't know that number. And even just that alone is a good reminder when there's like this data and these percentages and these things that you're mentioning. And so I hope very much that when someone goes to Omnisend, that they will be retargeted, that you're capturing an SMS and all those things. Am I right on that guess?
So we're not overly aggressive with you, which is why people love us, right? Even when we maybe lose out to a competitor, we'll wish you luck, right? We'll say we'll see you in 6 months, right? But we're pretty laid back over there. So we're not going to be asking you. That's why we don't gate a lot of things. We just want to make it, we want to make our expertise shown. So we're not going to hammer you over the head with SMS and all that stuff. So don't be scared. Come explore us. We treat each other like family over here, and we love it that way. And I think that's what makes our customers love us.
Fantastic. It's like Olive Garden, but even better because it's an SMS and email platform. So the place to go is omnisend.com, and we'll see you there. And you tell Greg and tell the team that Robert Plank from the Marketer of the Day podcast sent you. So omnisend.com. And thanks, Greg, for showing up and sharing some cool ideas and data.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'll leave you with one final thing, and I'll make it super quick for you. This stuff does not have to be hard. It's really easy. It's just one thing at a time. So we talked about a lot of high level things and a lot of things today. Don't get overwhelmed. It's super easy. Just do one thing at a time. We can guide you through that as well. But anyone listening, regardless of how many resources you have, one thing at a time, and you'll get it done. I promise you.